The Jimmy Mathis Show continues next.
If you can require school teachers to give fingerprints, my daughter's a school teacher now in Arundel County, and she's got to give her fingerprints. And this innocent daughter of mine's got to give her fingerprints. Certainly someone who wants to buy a handgun, who has nefarious ideas, but when he or she is going to use that gun, they can give their fingerprints as well.
Maryland may be bolstering gun regulations, but across the country, more states are easing them.
And
no one volunteers to go to the hospital and say, gee, I'd like to go to the hospital. I see what kind of deal I can get, and if I'm really smart, I can avoid paying my bill. Who would do that?
Are we having the wrong conversation when it comes to the cost of health care in America? Stephen Brill from Time Magazine joins me to talk about why health care costs are killing us.
In the 9 o'clock hour,
Professor Richard Vatz joins me in studio.
Join the conversation toll-free from anywhere in America. 1-800-767-WBAL. The Jimmy Mathis Show on WBAL continues now.
Welcome back, everybody. With you until 10 o'clock. I'm going to jump into this article earlier in the week in the Wall Street Journal, pro-gun laws gaining ground. We're not talking about that. All we're hearing is about legislation that is trying to make gun ownership more restrictive, especially in states like Maryland, New York, Connecticut. But you're not seeing anything happening at the federal level. This can't get out of the Senate right now. And this is a major initiative from the president. And when you look across the country, you're not seeing restrictive gun legislation. You're actually seeing laws that are more pro-gun. Let's go to Ben in Columbia. Ben, good morning. How you doing?
Yeah, good morning, Jimmy. I heard you guys talking earlier that like a lot of the legislation that Martin O'Malley's passing is, a move to what he may have in his future, obviously to run for president because, Mikulski ain't retiring anytime soon. And even if she does, I'm pretty sure John Sarbanes, yeah, that's the right one. You're going to be like, hold it, that's mine. That's mine. I served in the 3rd Congressional District, and that's automatically the seat you take for Senate, just at least from that perspective. But anyway, I even think, Martin O'Malley shouldn't even, be thinking like, I don't know if he even knows that he's really going to win the Democratic primaries. He might be like trying to do something to fit in with the big boys, as I kind of like to call it, because realistically, he isn't going to win the primary because he ranks like 5th or 6th after like Hillary Clinton, Deval Patrick, which is the governor of Massachusetts, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, so many others I can think of, like, Elizabeth Warren, or heck, even if Joe Biden decides to come in, yes, Joe Biden is ahead of Martin O'Malley.
Well, we say that, and you may disagree with the legislation that he's pushing through here, but we're talking about winning a Democratic primary. Look at what he's done, okay? When at the national level, when you couldn't get the DREAM Act done, not only did he get it done, it survived referendum. Gay marriage. Now the gun bill, something, again, that couldn't happen at the federal level. This offshore wind thing. Again, I'm not agreeing with this policy, but you got to remember who he's playing to at that point. He's playing to Democrats.
Yeah, but here's the thing you got to remember. Andrew Cuomo and Deval Patrick, guess what?
Yeah.
They all passed the same thing, and they beat him to the punch. Massachusetts and New York, they did all that stuff before Maryland did. And Andrew Cuomo, obviously, when you look at the family scenario, and like if you even looked at the convention last fall, Deval Patrick and Martin O'Malley had speeches back to back, and Deval Patrick had like a bigger, motivation there. Plus, also a lot of the commentators on their side, there are very few like Maryland-based left-wing commentators I can think that would actually serve O'Malley, except maybe Chris Matthews, because although he does the show out of D.C., Chris Matthews lives in like Rockville or somewhere in Montgomery County, while, Rachel Maddow, Massachusetts-based, even though she does the show from New York. And obviously, speaking of New York, Andrew Cuomo, well, that's basically most commentators on the right and left, including Sean Hannity, which despite, sounding like he's from Arkansas, he's really from Brooklyn.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why Giuliani was one of his favorites. And however, though, I'm thinking like O'Malley's trying to play to the big guys, not just to actually win the primary, but like if he doesn't, then like under President Cuomo or President Clinton, he might get a position, maybe even a possible running mate. You know, if that's the case, or if they do win, maybe he might become Secretary of something.
Right.
For all we know, I mean, like, who knows? What do you think he would be? Obviously, probably not state.
Well, you hit it in the beginning of your phone call, Ben. What I thought he was going to do was take Mikulski's seat, but she's now chairing the Appropriations Committee at the Senate, so I don't think she's going anywhere in the near future.
Mikulski probably will. But the only thing I think will stop Mikulski is a death certificate. No offense to her or anything
I know.
like that.
But I thought, again, before she got her promotion there, I thought that she would step down while Governor O'Malley was still governor, and he would point himself to her position. And she's not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere in the next couple of years.
Women have a tendency to live longer. I mean, like, give her at least another 10 to 15 years. I mean, not to also mention, I think John Sarbanes wants the seat when she steps down, because when you think about the 3rd Congressional District, that's what almost every senator since before I was even born has come from. John Sarbanes' father, 3rd Congressional District.
Absolutely.
Mikulski, 3rd Congressional District. Cardin, 3rd Congressional District. So I have a feeling Paul Sarbanes is going to be like, hold off, leprechaun. That's mine.
Thank you, Ben. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it. Let's go to Bob in Hampstead. Bob, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good, Jimmy. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Look, hey, I just wanted to weigh in on the gun control issue, just a little bit about my background. I was a cop for 27 years, and I spent most of that chasing bad guys with guns, investigating robberies and homicides and what have you.
Yeah.
And this may come as a shock to some people, but I never found one of these guys that went to a gun shop or a gun show and bought their gun.
Right.
I mean, these guys got guns off the street. I had a guy, one of them, tell me one time that I asked him, don't these laws affect your access to guns? He says, man, he said, you and I leave this room at the same time. He said, I'll have a gun in an hour. He said, you're going to have to wait 7 days. And you know what? He's right. He's right. Maryland's had the toughest gun laws in the country for a long time now. We've had the handgun roster board. We've had an assault weapons ban since the 80s. And Baltimore's still always in the top 10 deadliest cities in the nation.
Well, it's the same thing with Chicago, Bob. I mean, you look at Chicago, which next to Maryland also has some of the most restrictive pieces of legislation in the union, and had 500 murders last year.
Well, and up until recently, you couldn't even possess a handgun in the city of Chicago unless you were one of the elites.
Right.
And they were killing people. More people were dying on the streets of Chicago than died in Afghanistan. You know, it's ridiculous. This is about people. This is about inefficient government that has no other answers other than, gee, let's have more gun control. Let's buy some guns back off the street. That's going to work. Yeah, like Joe Dope Dealer is going to come in and sell his handgun for $50. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely inefficient, and it's more about Martin O'Malley running for president than it is about doing anything to keep the streets of Baltimore or Maryland safe.
But that's the conversation. Yeah, but we say that. But if he's trying to appeal to a national base, the national will is not here, and it's really not here with Democrats, if you think about it. Again, we're not talking about federally this getting caught up in the House. It's in the Senate, and it's the most important thing on the president's agenda right now, and it can't get out of the Senate. And what we're talking about is more restrictive gun legislation across the country, but in reality, and this is the article, it's a great article, pro-gun laws gain ground in the Wall Street Journal. I posted it on my page. This year, 5 states have passed 7 laws that strengthen gun restrictions, while 10 states have passed 17 laws that weaken them. So in a post-Newtown society, what we're really seeing, and you can go through state by state, including Kentucky, Tennessee, they're actually making it easier to get conceal and carry permits. They're getting rid of gun-free school zones. Same thing with religious facilities. So really, across the country, not only are we not seeing more draconian gun legislation at the federal level, at the state level, and again, removing New York, Maryland, California, removing these extremely liberal states, but across the country, we're seeing states that are, lessening up on gun laws.
Well, and you know what? And that's a common sense thing to do. Look, even when I was a cop, and even now as a retired cop, honest people with guns don't scare me. Never did and never will. I would answer prowler calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and homeowner would answer the door, and he'd have his gun in his hand. And you know what? If I was him, I would have as well. Wayne LaPierre, his timing and his verbiage may have been horrible, but he hit it right. When there's a bad guy with a gun, the only thing that's going to stop him is going to be a good guy with a gun, whether that good guy is a police officer or a very well-trained and equipped civilian.
Right.
If you look at any of these mass shootings that we have, if the guy that went into Aurora, Colorado, was immediately confronted by a licensed gun owner that was trained how to use it, could have changed the dynamics of that situation in the blink of an eye. And if you look at these situations, the only time that these people are successful is when there's no armed individuals around. As soon as they're confronted with somebody that's on the same footing as they are, with the same ability to fight as they can,
right.
What do? They kill themselves. So, if we have an armed citizen and this jerk kills himself right off the get-go, well, great. The situation's over and we don't have to take him to trial.
Bob, thank you for the phone call. Have a great weekend.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate it. Your phone calls on the other side of the break, 410-467-WBAL. JR, get to you next.